All right, thanks everybody for joining us. I'm Luke Berger. I'm in San Diego. My home site is Crestline. I'm in H3. We're doing a talk about weather forecast, but we're not really doing sort of the scientific type of side of the talk. We're doing more of a practical resources online, where to check the weather, just the down and dirty of what you really need to know. And the point is to basically answer the question, is today, tomorrow, this week, a good day for me to fly? And it really is aimed at the H2 young H3s because, certain conditions that you are looking for. And then there might be conditions that aren't ideal, that may be too strong or, of course, too weak, or the wind's blowing in the opposite direction. First off, I want to thank Takeo. Everybody should know who Takeo is. He basically founded the Bay Area Fledglings. Started this whole kind of movement where we now have a SoCal fledglings, we have East Coast, other regions in the States, and this is his paid Zoom account. So all the technical stuff, thanks to him. So I really appreciate you facilitating this, Takeo. Also, I want to thank Jess Corner for joining us. She's the president of the Fellow Feathers Club, which is at Fort Funston in San Francisco. She's an H4, recently growing into a comp pilot, and a great person all around who does a lot for the sport, and also a personal mentor of mine. Also joining us, I'm looking at who's all online. Nate Hallahan is a really good friend of mine down here in San Diego. He's also a Crestline pilot, also a Silmar pilot. So I'm going to look to him to jump in if I say anything wrong about flying conditions at Kegel. Also on is where did Peter go? He was on, but we had another Kegel pilot. No, he's there. Okay, yeah,
I'm
Peter.
still here.
Yeah, I'm looking right at you, and for some reason, so Peter's also H4 now, right, Peter?
That's correct.
Yeah, and Peter's also recently been flying comps, and so he's also a guy I'll lean on to talk about if we mention weather conditions, because he's probably flown a few more sites in SoCal than I have, because he's flown Owens, he's flown Santa Barbara, and several other sites too. So Peter, feel free to jump in. Jess, please jump in at any time, especially when we're talking about some of the areas that you're more familiar with. So without further ado, we'll get started. Can everybody see my screen? You should be looking at the Crestline Soaring Society homepage. So before I get into specifics on the websites and the tools, the first piece of advice I can give you is one of your best sources for forecasting is other pilots who you're going to be flying with at those sites. So you can always get with them. With Crestline, we have a van ride that goes up, and that has a reservation system. So the weekend's coming and you look and there's no van posted and there's nobody reserved, maybe there's nothing going on. But then Thursday night, if you see a van pop in for Saturday and the first van is already full with all these senior pilots, then it's probably going to be a good day. And also ask the senior pilots and ask them, what websites do you use? What phone apps do you use? And they're going to share with you some of these same sites that I'm about to show you. So a lot of the pilots down here are familiar with the Crestline site. Right on the homepage, we have the dashboard that shows you the wind speed and direction, but we're going to go click on weather detail. And it's going to take a second. And there we go. So primarily, and we're looking at the Crestline launch, and then down below on the page, we will have Marshall and the LZ as well, the same thing. But we have the basic wind graph, really easy. It's giving you all the basics, time of day across the bottom. We have temperature over here on the right, the wind speed on the left. So the green line, so this was recorded obviously today. So this is what today's wind conditions turned out to be. And the gray line that you're seeing sort of in the background, those are the gusts. It's important to see that. You can click on where it says today and you can change it in the calendar going forward. So now we're looking at the prediction for tomorrow. I do want to point out that this tends to be a little conservative in its predictions. So if it's saying 15 right here at peak lift in the afternoon, it's probably going to be a little bit higher than that. And that was true when we go back to today. If I could go back in time and show you this earlier in the day, you see this line that still exists down here. That was the prediction. And you can see that it blew consistently over 20, gusting probably well over 25 in the afternoon. So that's your basic wind speed and direction. And I will tell you from experience, this is fairly accurate. One thing to remember is that it's more accurate like within the first, like 24 to 48 hours before. I mean, it's Tuesday. And if I jump out to Friday, we're looking at a switch here in the afternoon. It's going to be blowing cross and forecast to switch around 2 p.m. That could change considerably between now and the weekend. So keep that in mind. All weather forecasts are like that. They're going to be way more accurate 48 hours before than they are a week or even 2 weeks before. So I'm going to go back to today. So like I said, when you scroll down, you're also going to see Marshall. And then you scroll down a little further, you're going to see the LZ. So we want to know the wind direction speed on where we're launching, where we're landing, of course. Wind direction and speed, important for launch, but what about lift? How is our flying conditions going to be? So that's where this windgram comes into play over here. Now I'm going to go to another screen that's going to show this larger, but you can always see this right on the web page. It works really well on your phone too, and you'll see it full size. And when you click down here on the bottom, it'll only go out to plus 2 days. So here's tomorrow, and then here's the next day after that. And that's as far as it goes. Now, these are generated by what's called the RASP tool, which is in a website called Soaring Predictor. And there's a guy named Alan Krause who manages this. A lot of people did some really hard work programming all this stuff, putting this information together so it could graphically display. And a lot of the hang gliding sites actually use this, because we'll end up on the Silmar page in a minute, and it's going to give us a lot of the same information. So I'm going to stick with today. And when you click on this right here, view all, I'm not going to click it because I've already got the page up, but you're going to click on this and it's going to take you. This screen right here is actually inside Soaring Predictor. And these are the wind grams for all the areas in SoCal. So you'll see this is the same one that I just had up. This is Crestline. And then over here on the right, you can see all these other sites: Blackhawk, Ord, Cagle, Crestline, Marshall. And these are the ones that say south. These are really the San Diego County sites: Palomar, Little Black, Big Black, Torrey, Blossom, Horse, etc. So you can look at all these guys just from this one site. We'll stick with Crestline for right now. And I'm going to go through the basics of what all this stuff means without getting into anything too technical. I was warned that if I mention SKUTs, I'll get shanked. So we're not getting into that level of weather stuff, but just the simple things. So if you want to know what this stuff means, I'm not going to go through it all. It's all summarized right here. So it's actually really simple. You're really looking at those colors, first of all. The colors down here are basically the condition of lift. It has to do with the lapse rate, but we're not going to get into the technical definition. So what I'll tell you is, farther to the left, the hotter the color is going to tell you what the better lift is going to be. So you'll see that most of this is blue right here, this sort of normal blue, and that's in the stable category. That means that the thermals aren't really gaining velocity as they rise. So this particular day isn't particularly good for lift. Now, how you can confirm that is when you look at the top here, the top line, these digits in yellow, that's your actual predicted lift in feet per minute. So you can see at 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the peak lift, the highest was 273 feet per minute up, which for hang gliders isn't particularly good. You're looking at good and 400 to 500 feet per minute, which at least me personally is what I consider good. 600, 700 feet up is great. If you're getting more than 800 feet per minute up, that's like a big day and you're going up really fast. When you see this chart showing more of the orange and the red, that's your big air days. And I'm actually going to show you what that looks like today because we're going to go to this site called Black Hawk, which is on the range of mountains from Crestline. It would be to the east, sort of over kind of far behind Big Bear. And you see at Black Hawk, you see how like all this is orange right here. That is really significant lift. So at, well, I say that and then I got to correct myself because it was peak at 452 feet per minute, which is pretty good. This is about what the wind gram looked like when we flew on Sunday from Marshall. And everybody did pretty good. Peter did really well, took off and just hammered up to what you almost got 8,000, I think, Peter, or might have gotten over. And that's about where that ceiling was predicted. So that's what you're primarily looking at is those colors, oranges and reds. Pinks are okay. But if it's down here in the blues, like Crestline was, let me go back to that. This is not going to be significant thermal activity. The farther over to the left it is, the warmer the color, the better the thermal activity, where essentially thermals are going to, they're going to go up and they're also going to grow, and velocity increases as they go up. Pretty simple. Another thing to know about these wind grams is, see this gray area over here? That's called an inversion. And without getting into the technicals of lapse rate and everything else, just think of inversion as something you don't want to, or you really can't fly into. Essentially, the simplest way to explain it is, in an inversion, the temperature is not going down as you go up in altitude. So I can show you, let's look at, I know this is Torrey Pines, but this is a giant inversion layer at a really low altitude. So that's not going to be a soarable day in terms of thermal lift. If you see a layer like that going across, and it'll happen at Crestline and Marshall, you want to look at the altitude that that inversion layer is at. Typically, that inversion layer is going to be relatively low. There are cases where we can take off from Crestline and be above the inversion layer and still have a decent day. But generally speaking, seeing an inversion layer isn't going to be particularly good. So I'm going to go back to this reel right here. So after what we just discussed, okay, so today wasn't fantastic in terms of thermal lift. But judging by the wind speed and direction, anybody can jump in and answer this. So here's a quick question. Was today a good day to fly Crestline? Anybody? I'm not looking at the chat, so I don't know. Maybe somebody answered it.
Nope. Trick question. Every day is a good day to fly at Crestline.
Well, that is actually true to a degree. Remember, we're in Southern California. We don't have a lot of rain, and pretty much from late April, May, all the way through October, you can soar almost every day. The answer I was looking for is today wasn't particularly good for thermal lift at Crestline, but this would have been a pretty darn good day for ridge soaring. The ridge lift would have been excellent. Anything above or around 15 miles an hour, launching at 2 to 4 p.m. here when it was blowing consistently 20, you would have want to waited for a low cycle. You would have definitely had a wire team. So when you guys are ready and at that stage where you can launch in conditions like this, I know the Kegel pilots are pretty much used to this a lot. This would have been great for ridge soaring. You might not have gotten that high, but it would have been consistent lift anywhere along the back ridge. If we go down here and we look at Marshall for the day, probably still could have gotten some ridge lift a little bit, but after 2 p.m., it was blowing consistently around 9-10 miles an hour, gusting to 12. I'm sorry, actually it gusted above 15 at least once, but gusting to 15. So it could have been pretty good for ridge lift, at Marshall as well. But again, on the wind gram here, the intense lift was only below 4,000 feet. So another thing that I'll point out on these wind grams, a couple of these symbols that you can look for. So you got the clouds. That's the easiest one. That's where the predicted cloud base is. So are you going to get above cloud base? Probably not. But the difference that you kind of look at is if you look down here and you see these little paraglider shaped things, what that is that's the predicted maximum usable lift, at least by this model. So you see a pretty big delta there in between the cloud base and then the predicted maximum usable lift. So this was a pretty weak day as far as thermal performance for Crestline. But again, we'll go back to Blackhawk. Now, I've never flown Blackhawk, so I don't know what the wind direction is for launch, but you'll see the little barbs here, and the little barbs have a little flag on the end of them. So that tells you which way the barb is pointing. So you see the wind direction, and it's pretty shifty, but you can kind of see at Blackhawk, these little paragliders, they kind of match this profile of where the pink turns to orange. So this is showing the thermal activity building from noon to between 4 and 5 o'clock, where this sort of the peak usable lift right here at about 3 o'clock. So you probably would have gotten around 8 grand flying from Blackhawk at around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah, Peter said you need a north-northeast at Blackhawk at launch. So this is showing, that's a little north. So, and of course the direction, the top of this is north up here, east, west, and south. So if it's coming from the northeast, this actually around 4 o'clock, 3 to 4 o'clock looks like it would have been a good Blackhawk day. So, and like I said, the other sites are here as well. There's Kegel. And you also still have the +1, +2 to look a couple days. So it looks like, Tuesday, Wednesday, this is Thursday. So this kind of looks pretty decent for Thursday. Of course, I'm not an expert on the direction here either. So this is coming from the west. So I'm not sure. That's good. But also you can notice here that the cloud base is rapidly dropping in the evening. So kind of where I wanted Andy to jump in on this. What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, that looks like it's coming in from the north and east altitude, but this is Kegel?
Yeah, this is Kegel for Thursday.
Wait, sorry, that's from south. Yeah, that looks decent.
Yeah.
Get about 5,000 feet.
Yeah. And Kegel has a lower launch than Crestline. So 5,000 feet at Kegel is what, about 1,000 over launch? 800?
Yeah, launch is at like 35, I think.
Yeah, Tim's giving me a thumbs up. So it sounds like that's good. So yeah, you can definitely go here and play around with this, look at the different sites. If you're interested, anybody who's in Southern California, Blossom is an H2 site. It's in El Cajon in San Diego. It's a pretty easy launch. It's a direct glide to the LZ if you happen to sink out. It's not a very high altitude launch. It's probably, I think it's 1,400, maybe 1,600 feet. So if this is showing, and this is today. So again, I don't remember the exact wind direction on launch, but let's assume the wind direction is correct. You see this orange and red is pretty significant lift. It's not it's still only 355, 325 feet per minute, but it's consistent. And the little paraglider symbols are kind of consistent with the top of the orange bubble. So cloud base, not too high, inversion layer above it. But like I said, it's a very low launch. So this is showing about 1,000 feet over launch that you could have probably gotten, if I'm correct, about the 1,400-ish feet of MSL of the launch. So these are pretty good charts. They're very, they typically are accurate. And these also, like I said, they do change. So if you're looking at a windgram on a Thursday, you go out +2 and you're looking at Saturday, check it again on Friday because it may actually change. So I'm going to leave that one there. And now what I'm going to do is move over to XC Skies. I've got that open in this window. So this is XC Skies. It doesn't have an app. It's only the website. It is a subscription-based website. So it's $40 for the whole year. I think it's totally worth it. A lot of pilots use this, and it works for basically the entire world. So as you can see, it kind of shows like Google Maps. Let me check the chat real quick. What is it? All right. And you can pretty much zoom into wherever your site is. Now, when you have an account, you can save different maps, basically different regions you want to look at. So I haven't yet, but I could save Crestline, I could save Valle de Bravo or wherever and just go right into it. But since Crestline's pretty easy to find, now this was 2 o'clock this afternoon, because Lyft, if we go to 8 o'clock at night, you could see how everything is kind of these darker, cooler colors. So everything is pretty much done for the day. But going back to peak Lyft at 2 o'clock, then we're going to zoom into Southern California. We're going to go over here to, that's Palm Springs, wrong spot, Highland right here. And we get close enough. So Marshall Peak pops up right there. And right here where it says Playground Drive Hill, 5,396 feet, right about here, just underneath it is right about where the Crestline launch is. And if you zoom in a little bit closer down here in this area, Andy Jackson will actually pop up somewhere near here, near Devil's Canyon Road. Actually, it's actually over here by Badger's Canyon. But, and you can also click on this little eyeball icon right here, and it's going to show you the topographic map. So, there it is. Andy Jackson's right there. So there's the LZ topographic map. Kind of figure out. So, it's a little more clear here. You can see this is the back ridge. Here's Marshall. This is what we call the front ridge. Last chance down here, so on and so forth. But what we're really looking at, we're going to click on that eyeball again. Again, we're looking at colors. The colors are indicating where the altitude of the maximum usable lift. So these dark and light greens are pretty decent. So over here, you see on the index, the dark green is 6,000 to 7,000. The light green is 7,000 to 8,000. And the very light green is 8,000 to 9,000. And then we get into yellows and reds. For this area, that's about the most you'll see is pinks and the reds. I don't think we've ever gotten into orange, even on our boomer days. Over here to the east, we see these peaks. Obviously, you get a lot higher over there. If Owen Moores was on, he could tell us about some of those places. Again, like the other windgram that we were looking at, we have the barbs that show us the wind direction. So at 2 o'clock this afternoon, it was showing 9 to 10 miles per hour. That was one of the big things I wanted to point out. It's always good to cross-check your sources. So we're looking at this, and it's saying 9 to 10 miles an hour. But earlier, we were looking at this guy right here, and at 2 o'clock, we're seeing 17 miles an hour gusting to 20, 22. So there are going to be differences between different particular models. And remember, these are mathematical weather models based off satellite collection data. So it's a forecast. It's not, this is what actually happened today. So you want to, you're going to look at that like on the Crestline website, and then you can go also check XC Skies. They kind of jive. If there's vast differences between them, that's where you kind of get concerned. But this shows, lift up to roughly 8,000 feet, maybe 7,000 across the back ridge. And right here in this corner area, these are the different times of day. So ideally, you're going to be looking at anything from 1 o'clock to up to 4 to 5 o'clock. So it's like if I want to do if I want to do a late afternoon flight, for some reason, I'm forgetting the term we use for that, those late evening flights. Somebody remind me.
Glass off.
Glass off, yes. So if I was doing a glass off from Marshall at 5 o'clock, what's it going to be like? So there we are at Marshall. You can see we're dark blue, so the maximum is 6,000. Sounds like really, really good. Remember, there's a certain amount of optimism in these forecasts. And one way that we can easily display that is we can look at different satellite models. So this list up here, that's right here where it says GFS, then it says ICON, NAM12, NAM3. These are different sets of satellites where they're collecting the data from. So each one is collecting data from different satellites and using a different predictive model. Some models are more optimistic than others. Some models are actually better to use at different sites. I find for Crestline that GFS is pretty accurate most of the time, but I still want to compare. So I'm going to go back to 2 o'clock kind of peak lift. And now let's see what the difference is. See ICON, about the same, but a slightly lower wind speed. NAM12, this one's a little bit more conservative. It doesn't show as high of maximum usable lift. NAM3, even more conservative. RAP, probably even more. Not very high hopes on RAP. And then HRR, even more conservative. Jess was telling me yesterday that the HRR model is the most accurate one that they find for mission up in the Bay Area. So
Diablo more so, but yeah.
Oh, Diablo. Okay,
yeah.
I'm sorry. You'll also notice that when I changed the models, the number of days that are available in the calendar changed. So the HRR is only looking out as far as now. If I did refresh this earlier, so it'll show me yesterday, but it'll only show me through tomorrow. RAP is only showing me basically the next 24 hours. So it's going as far as Wednesday at 1700. NAM3 will show me tomorrow, and it'll also show me Thursday, but it's only showing it to me at like roughly 3-hour intervals. Same thing with NAM12, 3-hour intervals. ICON will show me through Friday. And GFS is a little more, I'm going to see if I can refresh real quick and see if it'll, yeah. So GFS is going to go out for the next up to 5 days. Again, like I mentioned earlier with the wind grams, that when you're pretty far out, things can change significantly. If you're checking it the day before, that's about the most accurate it can be, or the morning of. Now I got to get back into my area here. All right. So let me see. Okay, another thing to consider on this is over here where the winds are. This has a neat little feature. It'll show the wind direction in an animation, which is similar to some other websites. So you could just press that. You could toggle the little the flags off and look at the animated kind of wind direction. I just leave it on. It also displays the wind speed. Now, where it's set to right now is it's showing what the wind speed is on the surface of whatever part of the map it's on. So whatever the topographic, altitude of the ground is. But you can also change it to actually look at the altitude or at the wind speed and the lift profile at a specific altitude. So 4,000 feet, which is a little bit below Marshall's launch. And you can see how the colors slightly change and the wind speeds change. 6,000 feet is a little bit above where Crestline launch is, and there'll be some slight changes there. And then 8,000, 10,000, and nobody's really getting to 12,000. But you can see the wind speed increase significantly between 6,000 and 12,000, about double. There's the wind speeds at top of usable lift or predicted top of usable lift. So that's different as well. So you can play around with that. Again, I mentioned earlier that, when you have a paid account, there's a lot of things that you can do setting up your profile. You can set the units. If you like to look at altitude in meters, some people do that. If you like to look at wind speed in knots, all those units are changeable. And of course, you can save different areas that you can look at. So you have hot buttons to look at different sites. I think that's pretty much all I have to say about XC Skies. There's a lot more to it. I'm by no means an expert on the whole website and everything that it does. Pete, Jess, anything else we could say about XC Skies?
I would say, so you've been looking at the top of usable lift. If you're looking on the left nav, it's highlighted in yellow. I think the other one that's most useful is updraft velocity too. So that will show the, the rate of air moving upwards. It's like halfway down that first section under thermal lift. What is it? Thermal lift instability.
Updraft velocity?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if you click on a point on the map, this might not be intuitive either, but if you tap, at least on my phone, it'll pull up, typically it'll pull up like just one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it'll give you just a quick snapshot of all of the models, and either for updraft velocity or for top of usable lift. Kind of a good rule of thumb is like, okay, if this one is showing no lift for Route 13 and HRRRR. But the others are, there's two that look decent and two that look kind of mediocre. You can kind of consider if you can average those, if one of them says it's booming and the rest say it's terrible, you can probably guess you might not want to trust that one, because the model more or less hopefully will agree if it's a good or bad day to fly. So those are just two pieces I'd add.
No, that's a great point. I typically do look at top of usable lift, but there's a lot of other useful things that you can click on, experiment with. This and what you said, works with a lot of these things. You click on particular points, and they're going to give you information in that particular area. So, of course, you can get SKUTs for any place that you want when you get there, when those things become more helpful. So, again, this website doesn't have an app, but because you can see the graphics are pretty simple, it's really low bandwidth. So it's going to work on your phone. What I personally do is I keep those web pages open on my browser on my phone, and I can just snap to them and refresh them for any day. So I'm looking at, I'm looking at the windgram and the wind prediction on the Crestline website. And then I also have XC Skies open, right here in this area. I'm going to look at that. So I'll just pause for 1 second here. And, does anybody have, I got to open the chat. Does anybody have any particular questions at this point?
Just one small tech thing to add to the XC Skies, because I think I use XC Skies for probably more than any of the other tools, and think it's pretty great. But you can save, if you have an iPhone, you can go to the web page and then save it to your home screen on your phone, and then it creates a little icon that you can tap and open just like an app.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Perfect. Nate said earlier, XC Sky's default wind speed is at the ground. It's at the ground, though, at that altitude. So it's not basically giving the wind speed at 0 MSL. It's wherever the ground is on the topographic map. At least that's the way I understand it. So if I have it set at surface, like I said, just pointed out, when, depending on what you're using, it's going to give you that information. So if I go to Playground Drive and right here, so this is roughly where launch is. This was the top of usable lift above launch, at least by the calculation of the forecast. Not necessarily when you think of the ground, does the ground mean like the LZ? Because that's actually at what, 1,600 feet, roughly 1,649, I believe Andy Jackson is at. There's a ton of stuff you can play with. A lot of people, I haven't even really scratched the surface of all the things that it can do. But I'm primarily looking at that top of usable lift. Thermal updraft velocity is good. You can see how this changes over time. this was a pretty compared to all the other things that we looked at earlier, because we're still looking at the same day, which is today. This was a pretty optimistic model because it was saying this dark green is like up to 500 feet per minute. And we didn't see that on any of the other models, just on this one. But again, we can switch the different sets of satellites, and we can see that it dramatically changes. And of course, you'll see that in summary if you just click on that one point, and then, like just said, you see those differences. So they're all not really agreeing with each other. RAP 13 says it's garbage, you're not even going to get up, but that's one of the 5 models. So let me just double check the chat real quick. Nothing new.
One final thing to add regarding the wind speed at different altitudes, that's like a pretty practical reason to check it, is at some sites, this can happen at crestline on certain days. At altitude, it could be blowing down, and it might be, coming in either with thermals, or like I think later in the season, you might see, when the weather starts to cool off, it gets to be blowing out of the north. And so that's something you want to pay attention to, because that can be not so much fun.
Yeah. In the summer, when it's really hot on the ground, that's typically common, that the wind direction at altitude can be completely different. And then, that's getting into more advanced meteorological discussions. But, funky things happen where those two different things start to meet in the middle, and that'll happen later in the day, the LZ ends up going katabatic. All right, so that's XC skies. And what I want to do is I want to show you a couple of other things that, like I said, it's always good to compare notes. Actually, before I jump over there, let me go to Chrome, because I had some different things. This is Silmar's homepage. So if you're a Silmar pilot, you're probably more familiar than I am with this. But again, from the main page, I've already clicked on weather info, and these are all the different tools that they have. Unfortunately, there's a lot of dead links here. I'm not going to go through all of these. If you click on the SOCAL RASP, it's going to take you to the RASP table. That was similar to the other one that I showed you, but this is slightly different in the sense that it's showing sort of these colored charts. But you do have, sort of what they call the north area, and this is Silmar crestline, Blackhawk's on here. I think this is Elsinore. Yep. So if you click on these different things, you get the skew T. So there's Marshall. Crestline is the one hiding right behind it. This is Saboba over here. I had found it earlier, but there is a link here, and I lost it, to also get to the same other one where you have the wind grams as well, but it ends up going into the same place. There is a live wind like now report. I was having trouble finding it, but I don't know, Tim, if you want to point that out, possibly. I'm not finding it.
I forget, actually. I haven't been on this in a long time.
Yeah, there's a lot of sites here. They take you sort of to the general site, and then you need to go find Kaggle. But it's good stuff. There's stuff for, you scroll down, there's stuff for Dockweiler, Avenue S, Avenue L, Parker, Crestline, Marshall. That's all the stuff we already looked at. Elsinore, Santa Barbara. So there's a lot of things here you can look at. And of course, you can zoom over there on XC skies, so on and so forth. I wanted to at least show one NorCal site, so obviously I picked this one. The Fellow Feathers website, you can click on their weather link, go to the dashboard. This is a really well put together site. So there's they have webcams. I was watching it earlier and I wasn't seeing anybody fly. So I don't know why, because it looked really good to me anyway. So, so here's a visual with the wind direction and speed. It's blowing 20. I don't know why John's not out there tearing it up. It looks a little cross though. How does that look, Jess?
It's a little from the north.
Yeah.
Those are diver Dave conditions.
Yeah.
I'm going to post a link to the wind slammer that we use for Ed 11. Might want to try to bring that up. It actually has a webcam plus the weather data as well.
So wherever you're at, if you have a club website and it should have some weather info and it doesn't have everything you need, tell your, whoever in your club's responsible for like the sort of the IT and the comms, they're more than welcome to come check out our websites, copy what we're doing. Dashboards are always really handy. And, Dan Quick is our communications director at Crestline. He put together, really updated the website from what it used to be. It used to be like old school HTML and sort of brought it into the modern era. I'm sure he'd more than happy to share like some of his techniques and tactics. So club website's a great resource. Now, what I'm going to show you now is a couple other websites that primarily for wind direction and speed, but they do have a lot of other tools. Well, there's Torrey Pines website. I won't go too deep into Torrey Pines because that's a ridge soaring site that's H4, but like right in the front, there's a webcam so you can see how it looks. But they're not really interested in thermals. I'll start with Windfinder. There's basically 3 websites I'm going to go through real fast because they're all very similar. They basically show the wind direction and speed in an animated kind of form, and you can look at it over time and you can actually sort of press play and watch how it changes. I mean, this is showing me the whole world. If I want to sail across the Pacific, I'm looking at the trades here in the Pacific. But I will go into today, let's see, we're at 8 p.m. I can't go back too far. Let me go to tomorrow around 2 p.m. And this is the prediction for wind speed and direction. And then I'm going to come in on San Bernardino. So this is Windfinder. It does have an app. I have it on my phone. But again, like I said, cross-checking, you've got to forecast wind speed and direction, look at something else, see if it's jiving. And here, if you get in too close, you lose the colors, but you still have the animated. And here it is coming from the south. So this is, pretty much perfect launch direction for Crestline and Marshall. And like some of the other sites, you click on the little points and there's 10 miles an hour. So we come down here, there's Marshall, 2 p.m. tomorrow, 9 miles an hour. So this is telling me good wind direction and speed for flying. And then of course you can go through the times. If you back up just enough to get the colors to come back, and of course, it has a scale down here. So if it gets into the green, it's going to be getting too fast for launch above 20 miles an hour. So it's really nice to look at something like this. Also, when you go through the process of animating it, so you can look at it over like a 6-8 hour period, when you're looking for convergences and seeing who's predicting what. So the next one, I'm going to go back over to the other browser. This is Windfinder. Another one is called, where did I put it? I put it on my other browser, my other browser. Hold on one second. I got too many windows open. All right. So Predict Wind, I for some reason, I have an account on this and it doesn't want me to log in for some reason. Predict Wind is really similar to Windy and Windfinder. It's going to show you very similar things. It's got a ton of tools. They have free version accounts and they also have paid version accounts. And I'm pretty familiar with this because we use this in sailing a lot. It's very accurate the first couple of days before, but same as anything else. You can look at stuff 2 weeks out, but it's 2 weeks out. It's like maybe 30% reliable. The closer you get, the more reliable it is. So I won't spend too much time there because I can't even get into this one, but I'll go to Windy and I got to turn off this real quick and go back to, so just like the one that we were looking at a second ago, this is Windy. We were looking at Windfinder, very, very similar animated map. showing me the wind direction and speed. Right now I'm at Wednesday 12 to 3. They do have a premium version of this, which gives you sort of like, because right now it's giving me 3-hour blocks. If I had the premium version, I could go to just every hour or probably even finer than that. Very similar, but Windy does have, I think it's still in beta version, but it has sort of a thermal activity predictor. It's over on this, these are all the different things that you can toggle on. So right now I've got thermals toggled on. So this is wind speed and direction, but if I toggle on the thermals, then that's the color it's giving me. Obviously, the darker, warmer the color is, the more thermal activity, or the more intense the thermal activity is. So I don't have a premium account on this. I'm sure if you did, it would be a little more definitive in what it's showing you in the times. But at the bottom of the window, obviously we can advance. We're on Wednesday afternoon. We'll jump ahead one section, and we obviously starting to weaken here. We'll go to Thursday. It's Thursday afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and toggle the thermals off, go back to wind speed and direction. So here it's blowing really cross here. It's coming from like the northwest. So this is predicting really cross. So if you were to come in on Crestline's launch, this is blowing directly across the launch. So according to this prediction, you would not be wanting to take off in these conditions. So those three are really similar. All three of these have web or phone apps. They do have paid versions. The paid versions are more feature rich and more detail. But again, I think the big thing is I personally just stick with the free accounts, but I'm just using this to cross-check what I've learned from the predicted wind grams. And jump ahead to Thursday. So remember that said it was going to be blowing cross. And this says it's going to be coming from the south. So we have a disagreement between these two forecasts. And this is only 2 days in the future. So it's something to watch. See if Windy is going to change its mind for Thursday afternoon. But pretty much with that, that's kind of all I had as far as those are the tools that I use the most. Yeah, Peter said the thermal feature isn't very accurate on Windy. So I totally agree with that. Takeo provided the link for WindSlammer, so that's the Ed11 live wind device.
Yeah, and along with what Luke said about helping your clubs do their web portal for weather information, if people want to know how that is done or how we're doing the WindSlammer, because I do the cameras, or I do the backhaul, the network downlink for both Funston and Ed11. So if anybody needs help with that, I'll be happy to answer questions or give advice, etc.
Yeah. So I went over to the WindGram. I went ahead to Thursday, and if you can see all this gray in here. There's an inversion here. You've got a really low cloud base. This is kind of jumbled up, and the barbs on here it is showing that it's going to be blowing a little cross. So this prediction right here on the regular wind chart is disagreeing with what this says at 3 o'clock. So I would always say, if you've got two different sources that disagree with each other, that's definitely an area of concern. If you're looking at several models and you're looking at it the day before and they all agree with each other, then you can have relative confidence in that assessment of what conditions are going to be like. So that's, like I said, pretty much all I have. Does anybody have any particular questions, anything else they want to bring up? The weather talk that Thomas Lowe did is recorded. It's published on the Fledglings YouTube channel. It's an hour and a half. And it does get into the more sciencey part of SKU-Ts, lapse rate, how thermals are formed from, you know, a more educational standpoint. I would encourage you guys to watch that. The more you fly, and the more you, you know, you're trying to develop your thermaling technique, the more you'll become interested in that, and it'll start to make sense. He only spends about 15 minutes on SKU-Ts, so he really does get to the point and get to the skinny. And it even helped me. I learned it from my instructor probably 2 years before I watched that video. And a lot of those things are really starting to sink in because now I'm more familiar with what that stuff really means when you're actually flying. You'll start to get into things, you know, like what it's like when weather conditions are prefrontal or post-frontal. That can have a significant impact on the intensity of the flying. Actually, I did actually have an example of that. This picture right here was from Nate. Just had to drop off because he flew with me on this exact day, and I think this was September of last year. So this is prefrontal flying. And the reason I'm showing you this particular picture is because you can actually see the front in the photograph, which is right here where my cursor is kind of tracing along. I'm probably about 5 miles to the east of the Crestline launch here. And I was right at cloud base. And the look on my face is because I'm actually just getting into cloud suck at this point. Getting ready to pull in and speed out of there because I don't want to be in cloud suck in these conditions. It was a little bit rowdy. It was very windy, and we were flying in front of a front coming in. So that's prefrontal. Yeah, so it was pretty rowdy and we got pretty high. So this is just shy of 10,000 feet right here. I've got other photos and video of that day. I'll spare you that. Because those fronts actually passed also. So myself and Nate actually flew for just under 2 hours, and we both landed because we wanted to get down before the gust front passed over the LZ, because that would have made landing like dangerous. Some of the other pilots who were waiting on launch, Nate and I launched, and we had gotten rained on, and then we got a break and we took off before it started raining again. Our other friend Hector had to wait through like 2 or 3 more cycles of rain as the front passed through. So Hector took off post-frontal, and he actually flew longer than we did. He got almost as high as we did. But, you know, the rub was like, well, we probably could have tried to stay up because we will let the front pass and then we could have enjoyed all that. But it turned out to be a great day. So, understanding what weather is doing and taking advantage of these situations, because this was predicted and we saw what was happening. We were looking for, you know, those kind of conditions, and this was kind of peak season. And that kind of particular flying, I think we really only got those particular kind of conditions once last year. So it happened to work out. And Takeo posted the link so you can watch that video. I would really encourage you guys to watch Thomas Lowe's presentation. You don't have to, it's 90 minutes. You don't have to do it in one sitting, but when he does get to the sciencey stuff, it is really good to the point and not a lot of fluff. So I would definitely watch that, and you can always cut it up into chunks.
For those who watch that video, I'm looking for suggestions on how to do the chapter. So if you have like particular areas that you found that are useful, send those to me and I'll put them in.
If any of you guys are flying other sites, and you know, you go to these sites, obviously XC Skies, that was one of the big points, is that it covers anywhere. So does Windy and Windfinder. As far as the other Windgrams and things like that, you know, those were a very Southern California kind of project. But, you know, ask the people that you're going to fly with, ask people who fly there regularly. And then, you know, you can always get back with one of us and say, you know, is there anything particular that you know of where I can look at conditions for this area that I'm going to fly? I may or may not be going to Red Rocks which is in Monroe, Utah, and that's high altitude flying. So I'm going to be interested in I'll look at XC Skies obviously, but I'll also ask the local guys. They did a series of classes. I wasn't able to go to all of them, but they did do one on weather, particularly for that area. So that's why site intros are really important when you're flying new sites, because they will go over local weather conditions. And you know what the locals know is probably the best way to say it. All right. Well, if nobody has any other questions or comments or war stories, I really appreciate everybody participating. We'll get this posted so other people can watch it. The best thing you can do for other pilots as you guys are coming up and learning and sharing is break out your phone and show people, when you're getting ready to go fly or planning on going flying, and share what you've learned. I'm not a salesman for XC Skies, but we all wish we could get a cut, right?
Definitely.
No problem, Tim. Tim said, thanks for putting this together. My pleasure.
Yeah,
anytime anybody wants to talk about things like that, you can always shoot me a message on Facebook or on one of the, the SoCal fledglings or the Bay Area fledglings, whatever.